Welcome to the Taste of Memory cooking program. In this series, we're going to devote our time in the kitchen to creating aromas, stimulating certain senses of the brain, areas that have been dormant due to a sad illness, dementia, AD, i.e. Alzheimer's. But we're going to utilize what we can do in the kitchen with recipes that will be forwarded by you as our program develops and grows. In association with this program, we developed a group called Living with Dementia and Alzheimer's. It's a support group that helps families who are struggling with loved ones who suffer from these diseases, and how essential it is that we come together as a group to make sure that we support each other. Now, in today's program, thank you, Craig, by the way, my neighbor, who had given me the recipe for banana bread. One of our first recipes that we're going to do, because it has a lot of sensory highlights to it that we will get into later. Now, before we go into the making of the recipe, one thing that's very important, preheat your oven to 350. I always forget this part, so thanks for joining us today, and let's get cooking with the Taste of Memory.
Today's recipe comes courtesy of my neighbor Craig. Thanks, my friend.
To say that the brain is fascinating would be a massive understatement. And it would take us over 1,000 episodes to get into all the facets of the inner workings of the brain. But we will get there. We will get there. We're going to take a look, just before we get cooking, at an area of the brain known as the limbic system.
Located in the center of the brain, just above the stem, is the limbic system. Odors or scents take a direct route from the olfactory bulb to the limbic. Housing the hypothalamus and the pituitary, it also contains the amygdala and hippocampus, the areas related to emotion and memory. In the Taste of Memory series, we're going to try to take all of these and tie them all together with recipes. Our recipe today is just the beginning. Let's take a look at our ingredients. We'll start with 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, followed by 1 cup of white sugar. Next is a 1/4 cup of unsalted butter. We're going to cream it down to make it easier for blending. We'll show you how to do that. 3 ripened bananas. What I do with these is I just put them in the freezer overnight, take them out in the morning, thaw them, peel them, mash them, and they're ready to go. One teaspoon of vanilla, bottoms up. 1 medium-sized egg, room temperature. 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. Next up, we'll be looking at our loaf pans. We're going to be using 4x9 loaf pans. They're fairly easy to work with. And what we'll be doing with these pans is that we'll be using a little bit of butter to line them, and then taking some flour and shaking it around, creating a non-stick environment so that when we pull our loaves out of the oven, they just release easy from the pan. Another option, you can turn them into muffins. Easily stored in the freezer, pop them out when you're ready to have one thaw, and they're ready to go. So you ready to get mixing? Now don't forget, set that oven at 350. In a stainless steel bowl, we're going to begin combining all of our wet ingredients first. It's always important when baking. So we're going to start with our room temperature egg. We want to whisk it. Whisking it as much as we can, setting up the base for the rest of the ingredients to follow. Next up, we're going to pour in our vanilla, and we're going to whisk that in as well. Just adding that vanilla already picked up the essence in the room. I see the dogs just starting to circle around. They'll be coming in shortly. Next up, we'll be adding our creamed butter. And how we did this was we just sat it in a bowl of warm water for about 15 minutes. It's made it really nice and workable to work it in with the egg and vanilla product. Notice that at this point we've switched to the spatula. We're no longer going to be using the whisk because we're going to be moving into more of a folding technique from here on in. With any baking, you want to try to be as gentle as you can. Trust me, in the end, it pays off. Now we add in our ripened 3 bananas, making sure every bit gets in there. And again, using the spatula, we just want to go easy with the ingredients. Wow. With the banana, the vanilla, it's really starting to hit the senses. And we haven't even got to the baking stage yet. Now we're going to enter in our baking soda and our baking powder. We're officially on to the dry ingredients now. And at this point, once we get the baking soda and baking powder thoroughly mixed in, we're going to slowly add our sugar and our flour. We're just not going to take the 1.5 cups and the cup and just dump it in. So we're going to start with just putting a bit of the sugar in, just like that, and start folding, working it in. Now, of course, if you have a mix master or a hand mixer that has one of the baking mixing features for it, by all means, go for it. It's going to make it a little bit easier for sure. Adding some of the flour, and we're going to work that in. My daughter's dog Flynn is hanging by very closely at this moment, so if he happens to poke his nose in, please don't mind. He's just curious. If anything, an interesting fact to enter in at this moment: dogs can develop dementia as well, and it's a very common thing these days that people don't understand when it comes to their pets. As they get older, they start to develop these very strange habits that they don't understand, and there's later diagnosis that they've had onset neurocognitive disorders. Yep, continuing to fold in our ingredients. Yeah, it's really coming together at this point. And you can feel it in the arms and the hands. So now's that time when that mix master would really come into play. Adding more flour. I have to say, Craig, thanks again for the recipe. We really appreciate this. We do kind of a competition on the Living with Dementia and Alzheimer's page that we ask group members to submit their recipes, and then we work them on the show. There he is. Flynn has come in for the kill, but Flynn, this is not for you. I promise I will be making some banana dog cookies for you. Just be patient. Keep that nose back, buddy. And that's the last of the flour. And the last of Flynn. So we're going to continue to work it, giving it a nice fold. In the series, we'll be mixing it up between baking and other dishes, using cinnamons, rosemary, curries, all the bright scents you'll find in an active kitchen. While mixing away, did you notice the color red being used with the plates and utensils? Serving meals on red plates offers great contrast and stimulates appetites in individuals with dementia and Alzheimer's. And our next step is going to be getting our loaf pans ready. We're going to grease them up with some butter and dust them with some flour to make them a non-stickable release. When our loaf comes out of the oven, that we did preheat for 350. So let's get ready and get our loaf pans going. Dusting a loaf pan is fairly straightforward. You just take some butter, a napkin, or a brush and just wipe it around inside the pan. Then take about a teaspoon or a teaspoon and a half of just flour and shake it around, dusting all the edges evenly. This creates for a non-stick bottom, making it easy for the loaf to fall out of the pan. Just adding our ingredients into the loaf pan. Also keeping a second eye on Flynn, who's not too far away. Ensure we get it all in there. We're just gonna very gently even it out in the pan. We don't want to separate the flour from the sides of the pan, so we're just gently doing this. Okay, we're ready to go into our 350 oven. Let's bake away. And of course, nothing beats the reveal. Just look at this nicely browned banana loaf. We don't need to say more after this. Take a look at some of these shots.
Now you're probably asking, why is it that we chose banana bread as our first recipe in the series? Well, banana bread automatically hits the high target for one of the most primary senses, scent. When the banana bread was baking in the house, everyone was just coming upstairs to the kitchen, of course, getting in the way, but their curiosity was, what was that wonderful smell that was just taking over the house? Bingo, right there, we may have stimulated an old memory for someone who is suffering from vascular dementia or Alzheimer's. Now, we don't know for sure, this is only just a theory, if whether aromas, taste, and just textures in general can take an individual who is suffering from any neurocognitive disorders back to a certain time and do some memory recall, which is important for them just for a brief moment in time, just to be back with us. Whether it's a minute, whether it's an hour, hopefully it's longer. But we're gonna utilize the Taste of Memory platform here and do what we can to help families that need that support in creating meals that are not only going to be activating senses, but also easy to prepare. Because we know when you do have a loved one who is living with you, who is suffering from a neurocognitive disorder, you don't have a whole lot of time to yourself to be able to recreate and have some experiences in the kitchen. So having the opportunity to do so, you might as well utilize both aspects. Try to create something that can help on both fronts. I want to thank you once again for joining us here, the Taste of Memory. And Craig, thank you very much for submitting that recipe for banana bread. Actually, I can't wait to dig into it. I promise I'm going to be just a little bit on digging into it. I'm not going to go crazy, but keep those recipes coming in. You can follow us on the Facebook group Living with Dementia and Alzheimer's, and there you can submit recipe ideas for us to do here in the kitchen. And I'm thinking with St. Paddy's Day coming up, I think we should do a good Irish stew. So feel free to get those recipes on the way, and once again, we'll draw from the hat and we'll see whose recipe it is, and we'll create it here in the Taste of Memory kitchen. Thanks again for joining us, and see you soon.